First things first, in this video, we're specifically going to be talking about if you're a player that's not a PPA touring pro. They abide by different rules. So if you are not playing in the PPA pro events, this will apply to you. So number one, if you're a rec player or if you're playing at a tournament, you have to understand and remember that let serves are going to be played. So if your opponent is going to be serving the ball and it's going to hit that net, you got to make sure you're ready for that, whether it bounces really deep or really short into the court. You got to make sure that you do your best to make a play on that ball so that you can resume that rally. Like I said, on the PPA tour, these let cores or these let serves, they actually stop the rally and reserve. But again, if you're not a pro, make sure that you're ready for the ball. And if that ball happens to tip that net, that you start to go forward into the court to make a play on that ball. The next thing that you need to know is that you need to make your out calls promptly right after you see the ball out. So the rule is, if I'm playing a point and my opponent hits the ball and I see it out, I could either put my finger up like this or I can verbalize out so that the ref can hear. The thing that you cannot do is hit the ball after it bounces and then wait for your opponent to strike the ball and then call it out. So you have to actually call that out ball before your opponent hits their next shot or before your ball crosses the plane of the net. Before we hop into the next rule, if you're trying to improve your game, we created an entire course called Total Pickleball Mastery, which goes over every shot that you need to hit in this game. Check it out in the description below or go to totalpickleballmastery.com. Next, let's talk about the serve. There's a lot of misconceptions on new serve rules and things like that, but I want to make it really clear. Again, these are for players that are not in the PPA playing on the pro tour. You can actually throw or toss the ball up. It is legal to toss it as high as you want. The biggest key thing is we cannot add spin with our fingers when we toss the ball. So tossing the ball high like this is totally okay, but the rule of hitting it below our waist still applies. So obviously I can't hit the ball and then hit it up here. I could toss the ball up like that and then hit it below my waist. The next thing that I do want to talk about and clarify when it comes to serving is you are allowed to use the drop serve. It's very important that you know you cannot throw the ball physically down. So you could drop it from different heights. So I could drop it from up here and then serve the ball, or I can drop it from low and serve the ball. But the main thing is that we're not allowed to apply force or spin when we're dropping or releasing the ball. Now, when it comes to the volley serve, where I just hit it out of the air, your swing path has to be in upward motion and you have to contact that ball below your waist. But when you're doing the drop serve, or we'll call it the release serve, that goes out the window. So when I do a release serve or drop serve, I can actually swing down, I can sidearm it, I can do anything that I want because I am releasing the ball and utilizing a drop serve. Last thing about the drop serve or the release serve, I don't know why you would want to do this, but you can actually let the ball bounce more than once. So there's not a rule against that. I can drop it from here, let the ball bounce a few times and then hit. So you can let it bounce more than once. Obviously your contact gets lower. There's really no reason to do that, but it's just something for you to know. Last but not least, this goes for the regular volley serve and the drop serve. But it's important that you know that you at least have to have 1 foot on the ground when you're actually striking and coming into contact on the ball. A lot of players, what they will do to get their momentum moving forward through the shot is that they will load their weight in their back leg and then they're going to come through. And when they actually strike the ball, they only have maybe their front foot or lead foot on the ground. And that's totally okay. That's totally okay to do. You got to make sure that you have 1 foot on the ground, kind of like this. Now this next rule kind of has to do with your serve, but it's more along the lines of when the ref is calling the score. So we know that they have to say 3 numbers, the amount of points that the server has, the amount of points that the returner has, and then they say 1 or 2 to indicate first or second server. So what's really important to note is that you have to make sure that they are finishing the first or second serve number. So let's say the score is 5-5-2. You have to make sure that they are saying 2 before you come into contact with the ball. So that being said, just as a little tip, I would encourage you to not rush to serve. Wait for the ref to call all 3 numbers, then take a breath, do your regular service routine, and then step up to serve the ball. The next rule that I want to talk about is when you are returning, okay? So let's say the point just ended and then you're coming from the odd side to the even side and I am getting ready to return. Now the server can step up to the line and then the ref is going to call that score right away and then the point will start from there. But if you're not ready, one of the things that you can do is verbalize that you're not ready, or you can put a hand up like this. And until you're ready, whether you need to wipe your hands or something like that, or just get into position and catch a quick breath, you can make sure that you say wait or put your hand up, and then once you put your hand down, the ref will be ready to call the score, and then you can continue to play on. All right, so now let's talk about a non-volley zone rule change, and this has to do with your paddle actually touching the inside of the non-volley zone. So we know this, obviously after a volley, we cannot fall in and then touch our paddle towards the ground or towards the non-volley zone, because that would be a fault. That's a momentum fault. But what happens if I'm getting low here and then I touch or scrape my paddle on the floor and then volley it? Is that a fault? Well, in 2025, it is not. And the reasoning behind this, I believe, is if you are in a good stance here and you are, let's say you're scraping your paddle on the floor or your paddle is touching the floor, soon as you lift it up off the non-volley zone, you are established, right? You don't have your paddle touching the non-volley zone and your feet are actually behind it. So now when you make contact, it's a clean contact, as long as you don't hit the ball and then fall back in. So you want to make sure that if you do actually scrape or touch your paddle on the non-volley zone or in it, you want to make sure you're doing it before contact, not after. Next on the list, I want to clarify the Ernie, or at least going for the Ernie. So when I hit an Ernie shot, or when I'm going for an Ernie, I want to make sure I obviously contact the ball on my side. And it is okay to actually follow through past the plane of the net, but you got to make sure that you hit the ball in front of the net at first, and then my follow through carry me back over the plane of the net, but I've got to make sure that I actually come back right to my side right after that. So we know this in high level play. Sometimes I will go for an Ernie, or you'll see somebody go for an Ernie and they don't hit the ball. And that's totally okay to do, but what's not okay is if I actually attempt to hit an Ernie and any part of my body or my paddle crosses the plane of the net and I did not hit the ball. So it is really important that if you are faking an Ernie or going for an Ernie and you don't get the ball that you want, you gotta make sure that you keep everything on your side of the net so that ref doesn't call that fault. Have you ever wondered if you are the correct server or correct receiver? Well, in 2025, you don't really have to worry about that as much as the past. The reason being is if you are on the wrong side as the server or the receiver, let's say I'm here receiving the ball and your opponent serves it and you return it, that point has to be played on. Unless the ref notices it, they can stop that point. Or if somebody playing notices it, they can stop the point. But if no one stops it and the point plays out and ends, that point will stand. But what happens if I actually notice that they're serving from the wrong side? Well, they can serve the ball and then I can maybe hit my return. And if I do notice it, I can actually stop play. I can say, hey ref, we're actually on the wrong side, or maybe they're on the wrong side, and then you can stop the play. And if it's correct, that opponent will reserve, everyone will get into the correct position, and then it will play on. Now, if I stop the point and it's wrong, or let's say everyone was in the correct position, then I will actually lose the point. So my advice to you is to play on as soon as that serve is struck. And the reason for that is I actually wouldn't want to be wrong in that situation. I'd rather just play out the point and then go from there. Now that you're in the loop with the new 2025 rules, here's a video here if you want to learn the 3 strategies to beat 99% of players. And check out our course here, Total Pickleball Mastery, or go to totalpickleballmastery.com.